Hello and welcome to Trinity Talk Live, water cooler conversation from a Christian perspective. You may notice right off the bat that I am not Ken Coughlin. Even though he kids me all the time that this is the Ken and Ben show, that the co-host has now become the host. Actually, in all fairness, we want to just say we hope Ken feels better. He is not here on the set. Well, actually, he is on the set with us, but he's not behind the camera. He's not in front of the camera because he's feeling a little bit under the weather. So bear with me because I've been on that side of this for a while, but this is my first time hosting. So just a little bit about me. I mean, if you've watched the show at all, really, you probably know me, but my name is Ben Lander. I'm the pastoral assistant here. I'm on Trinity Talk a lot, so watch one of those other episodes, find out more about me. But I'm also joined by our two members of our property board, property team, and that is, as you may notice, each month we're doing a specific focus on one of our ministry teams throughout this past year. And this month we are focusing on property. We do have a property team here at Trinity, and we're going to be discussing with these two fine gentlemen. But first I will let them introduce themselves, starting with the newbie over here.
I'm Sean Rule. I am property director, head of the board here at Trinity. I am also the assistant executive here at Trinity Lutheran Church. Been a member here for over 15 years. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, so I feel that that is a great asset that kind of carries through to the property and helping make sure we maintain the property here at the church.
And I'm Mark Koger. I'm the operations director here at Trinity, and also the staff connection person for the property team as well.
And Mark's been on a couple times before as well. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Thanks for agreeing to be here. We're excited to have you. And so first of all, I just want to kick things off with, what exactly is a property team? I know if you're a member of another church, maybe watching this, and maybe your church has a property team, maybe not. Maybe it's all under this umbrella of stewardship. But first, I want to ask you guys, in your own words, what is the property team? What does it do? How was the property team formed? So whoever wants to kick that off.
Sure. Basically, the property team is a group of people that actually monitor and maintain or make sure that the facility is being maintained. Everything from the outdoor grounds, the soccer fields, all the mowing, to the actual facility itself, the building, HVAC units, anything that's needed, anything needs repaired. They kind of oversee and make sure that things are taken care of.
And we also oversee the projects that are planning ahead, such as roof replacements or any modifications within the building itself.
Great. So you guys, talking about planning ahead and everything, when you make those decisions, just so we're clear, those decisions aren't made strictly by the property team, but they're within, we have what's called a PPC, a Parish Planning Council, which is the heads of all the teams come together, and it's kind of like our church council. How do you guys work in relation when you have building projects and looking ahead and things like that? How do you work all of that out?
Well, actually, Ben, to go back in history just a little bit, back in the 30s and 40s, early on, the Parish Planning Council mainly was driven by the needs of the facility. What had to be fixed or repaired or purchased. And over time, as the church had grown, we kind of had to segment the property team away from the PPC and let it give it its own focus. So what they do is if they have big projects coming up, they plan for it, find a need. They'll even try to find funding sometimes. Take it to our Parish Planning Council and say, here's a need that we have. And they would, consider voting on it to determine whether the need is just and how we can grow and move forward.
Great. Mm-hmm. So that's a great history and how you guys got to be here. And so now basically, from my understanding, that same structure is in place now. When you have, so what are some, for example, building projects or things looking ahead?
Well, for example, the food closet. They were looking into getting a walk-in cooler and freezer for the food closet. It enables them a pathway to getting additional food to give out to the community. So they came to us with that need, and we've helped work with them to get contractors to provide pricing. They have a grant application that they're applying for, so we had to get 3 quotes from contractors with the same scope on letterhead and things like that to show the pricing and the work to be done. And we coordinated and got all that done so they can submit the grant application. And then we'll help oversee when the construction's done to make sure that it fits what the needs are and it works within the building and the budgets that the church has available.
Great. Well, thank you guys. I understand also, and people watching may understand, that property is very practical. It's a very practical team. You guys do a lot of things working with people, getting grants and things like that, building. So it may not be necessarily the most exciting in terms of evangelism or in terms of the mission of the church, but then nevertheless, it's still a vital aspect. And I talked a little bit about how it falls under this, maybe fall under this umbrella of stewardship, but we also have a separate stewardship team. How do you guys see yourselves in relation to that stewardship team, and what does it even mean to be a steward of the facilities,
Sure.
which is what I would say you guys fall under?
Well, Ben, actually, I think it was one of the previous Trinity Talks we talked about lay ministry, and they're kind of behind the scenes, but yet they're a very key role because they're part of the worship experience when you come into church on Sunday. Well, the property team falls under that as well. They're behind the scenes. A lot of stuff gets done, but when you come in, you have a comfortable building to sit in and worship. Things are maintained. So it falls towards stewardship in that respect, that we're taking care of God's house and this wonderful facility that he's given us, and it's our job to make sure that everyone has a wonderful worship experience here.
Yeah, it's actually it's funny it's important that you mentioned we're taking care of God's house, because that's one of the first things in stewardship, that we understand that everything belongs to God and we're just giving back to him and taking care of his property, essentially. And I found this article is actually quite interesting. I'd like to I know we haven't discussed this beforehand, so I'm throwing you a little bit of a curveball here. But there's this little chart, and I was looking through this article, and it talks about the introduction to church facility stewardship. And this is under churchexecutive.com, under an article called Church Facility Stewardship. And they have this little pie chart of what's called the total cost of ownership of a church. So I don't know if you all were involved in the building of this facility, the sanctuary, and how much of this went into it. But it's interesting because it says that the total cost of ownership, they broke it down, and they said the initial cost of construction is only about 20% of the entire, what's called the cost of ownership. The other breakdown comes with 3% being in design fees, and also the cost of money or financing it. Mm-hmm. But then 71%, so a large chunk of it, is what's called operational cost.
Right.
So what do you guys, how do we allocate operational costs? How do we see that as our total cost of ownership? Just weigh in on that, however you...
Well, we know through time what operational costs typically are, and some of our projects are looking at ways to improve the operational cost, whether it's improving the lighting, going to LED lighting instead of the fluorescent or even older incandescent lighting, trying to help improve the operations and reduce those costs so that it's less expense to the church and those monies can be focused elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know it's challenging when you build a facility like we have here in the new sanctuary. It's about 11 years old, maybe, almost. And when you're building it, you don't realize what the maintenance is going to be down the road. That the HVAC units are going to go up. They're going to need to be replaced. Different things that go wrong. So you almost really have to try to forecast and plan for that. And that's not always easy to do, especially when you're working on tight funding sometimes. So it's prudent for us to try to plan that way and look ahead, but it can be challenging at times.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have an annual budget that we review, and we look at things that will be forthcoming that we'll need, like you said, a new roof and things like that, paving the parking lot and things like that. But yeah, what you're talking about reminds me of Jesus' words in Luke 24. He says, "Who among you, when building building a tower, won't initially count the cost first?"
Correct.
And of course, there he's talking about the cost of discipleship and counting the cost and what it will take from us. But the same thing is true from a stewardship perspective of all that we have been given is given to us by God. So it is very prudent to count the cost, and
Right.
particularly when we're talking about a facility, there's a lot of cost that goes into
Right,
it.
it is.
Would you guys mind sharing a little bit about just day-to-day things that give the viewers a little bit of a perspective of a facility this size, what all goes into it of just day-to-day operational management? Well,
it's a hot day today, so we're challenged with HVAC issues, in the school and the church side. That when you're hitting close to 90 degrees and the units haven't run yet this year, maybe necessarily, you find that there's some downtime with some of those units. So we're running around repairing those. Something that we've learned more recently is grass cutting, mowing the grounds. We have a total of approximately 9 acres, and you figure 4.5 of that might be, lawn care. And that needs to be taken care of every week. So we're trying to shuttle and get volunteers to help just most sections of grass or different parcels, and keep it looking nice each week for the church services.
And one of the things is trying to have a system in place with everybody else that's here in the facility day to day, that they know where to go and how to submit requests if something is broken or if they're having problems. One of the classrooms in school, apparently the air conditioning unit's not working, and now we've got to have the contractor back out to look at it. Just trying to have that communication in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, so you talk about those who are here on a daily basis, knowing where to go, where to find out information. What are some other ways that the congregation can get involved with the property and get informed? As far as, do you guys need any help or challenges that you have?
Absolutely.
Like that?
Yeah, we're always looking for volunteers because we only have maybe 7 people on our team, but we could use volunteers under them to really help support this entire facility. And such things as our cemetery, the memorial gardens we have. They're beautiful, but it's over 125 years old, and there's some maintenance that needs to be done out there as well. Just taking care of some stones, weeding, the lawn care, mowing once in a while, just basic cleanup of the area, and even inside the sanctuary and in the church and school, just basic things that need to be taken care of.
And along with the lawn care and the maintenance, some of the flower beds in the gardens, just finding volunteers to come out and regularly help weed and maintain them. We have our spring and fall cleanup days, but getting some help throughout the year, just occasionally to walk the property and pick up the trash around, and it makes it a little bit easier for everybody.
Yeah. It's also a time that we see the property teams not working with just 6 or 7 people. When we do the fall cleanup and the spring cleanup, we're getting the youth involved, and we get more people involved, and it's a stewardship as a group, as a congregation. It's kind of fun to get together and be able to share that.
Yeah, and I think that's very important for those who worship here, actually anybody who shares this facility, to have a little bit of that investment in it, in caring for it, right? Because we're all, this is God's house, but we're all stewards of that. So maybe I want to take a step back, although we talked a lot about some of the practical things, but now looking more at more of a biblical approach to it, or more of a spiritual approach to it. I came across this other article of just 5 ways to demonstrate church stewardship, is what it's called. So a little bit practical, but just tying into, we talked about stewardship and how that's taking care of what has been given to us, what we've been entrusted with by God. So first of all, number 1, it says, and feel free to interrupt me and weigh in on any of these as I go through them, but these are just ways to demonstrate church stewardship. The first one says, know what you are trying to accomplish. So we do that. We have goals that we set out every year that we bring before the congregation for approval and review. And so it's important. It says the first important step to good stewardship is knowing why you exist and what you are trying to accomplish. So the property board, do they have anything kind of, what are some goals that you're looking forward to, some things that you're excited about?
Well, the one thing with our goals is it's not just property goals individually. We have the other teams that have projects that become part of our goals and helping them out. We are always trying to maintain the facility and upgrade it. And there's been a couple concerns raised with the entrance coming in and the step being too tall for people. So one thing we're working on is like a handicap ramp, and just trying to improve the access to the building and make it more accessible and more inviting to everybody. We need to maintain the house, keep it working properly, but make it look pleasant and pleasing for everybody when they come and show up.
Great. Number 2 that it says on here is to budget toward the vision. So first of all, we have a vision, we set our goals, and then we budget toward it. And that's all part of the annual review that we have. We have our budget meetings, and we review our goals at that. So it says to create an annual church budget that funds the vision. It includes looking at strategic objectives that require financial support and allocating dollars to support church goals. So like you were saying, Sean, a lot of other teams will have goals that we mark on those goals that they require financial aid for. How does the property board get involved in things like that, things that need financed?
Well, basically, our budget is part of the operating, but a big chunk of the operating budget for the church is facility related and property related. But there are a few projects where we would probably seek donations from the congregation or outside help. It may be the handicap ramp, for example. We find that there's a need. We don't really have it in our capital budget, but we think there's enough people that might be willing to contribute to help make that happen, to aid others.
And we'll help the other teams as they have their projects. We'll help them to develop a budget so that they know what kind of funding they will need, if they have some of it in place, or if we need to reach out to the congregation on what that funding needs to be.
Great. Number 3 here, it says make wise spending decisions. So we have our goal, we have the budget toward that goal, and then we make wise spending decisions toward it. And that's all part of stewardship, you know. It's a very big part. A lot of times when people hear the term stewardship, they think of just finances,
Right.
but as we are putting in front of us throughout this year, and Pastor Jay is very big on that, is a holistic stewardship of life. And there are different spheres of it. You have your stewardship of your finances. Obviously, that's a big portion of it. You've got stewardship of time. You've got stewardship of resources. And property board definitely falls under that stewardship of resources that we have. So what are ways that you try to look at, you know, cutting costs without sacrificing quality for things, you know, such as you talk about lighting and looking at things like that?
Some of it, I think it's just evaluating and taking a good approach to determine what's the best way to get things done. We do, you know, multiple bids for things, and that's a real basic one. But
Especially in here too.
Yeah,
to have multiple
okay.
bids. Yep.
But there's some simple things we've learned even with cutting the grass. There's some not shortcuts, but better ways to do it, and we've adopted those ways to cut down time, and we're still getting the end result the same. So it's just logistics and doing things smart.
And some of our projects, we will utilize outside contractors, but there are certified contractors in the congregation that are willing to volunteer their time. The food closet building itself was a great example of all the time and efforts that they put into in building that building without having to go out and use the full outside contractors. Is getting a lot of that trained volunteer help to do projects that you can do in-house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's Food Closet's a great example of the church coming together and really making good use of the stewardship of our talents, time, resources, and things like that. It was major help. And now it benefits. We see the benefits of that in our community.
Yeah. Yes.
And actually, Mary Kay can correct me. How many families do we feed with that on a weekly basis?
It's about 40 every week.
About 40 families, which represents how many people?
On a monthly basis, we have anywhere from 500 to 700 people.
So that is 500 to 700 people that are experiencing the direct benefits of this stewardship approach that we have. Because we had a vision, we budgeted towards it, and we made wise spending decisions to help make that a reality.
And that's growing because, as Sean mentioned, we're looking at a walk-in freezer cooler.
Right.
So that ministry is actually going to be growing yet.
Yeah, exactly. Great. So we have 2 more here. And number 4, they say, is accountability for managing funds. So not only do we have to make wise spending decisions, but there's also these checks and balances that we have.
Sure.
Just like we talked about before, you know, the property team doesn't make the sweeping decisions for projects that we're going to have, but we bring it before PPC and different congregation. So what other methods of accountability do we have in place, or do you think are important to have?
Well, every month we receive budget reports about expenditures over the last month, and we look to see if there's anything out of the normal that we need to question or kind of ask, hey, could that have been done a little bit differently? But when we have larger projects that we're seeking funding for, we have to present the project, the budget, and then go to the finance team for approval, because they're there to make sure, is the project warranted, is it needed, and is the cost within reason, and where's the money going to come from? Is it going to come from funds that we have in the congregation, or are we going to have to reach out to see if we can get donations and things like that?
Yep.
Yeah, so not only the feasibility of the project, but also the how to go about it.
Correct.
Perhaps is important.
Right.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up too about, you know, wants versus needs, things like that. Is there any projects, like if you had just a pipeline of things that you would dream in the future, of things that we want here at Trinity versus things that we need, anything like that you can think of?
There's a couple longer term projects that we're looking at. One of them is to restore the bell, whether it's restore its activity and operation in its current location, or maybe bring it down to the ground. We know that's not a day-to-day functional operational thing, but it's one that we would like to try to restore its operation, just because it's there and the historic value of it, and that's one that we'll be working on over the next couple of years.
Interesting.
Yep.
Cool. All right, and then the final thing, actually, you touched on this, was to to avoid conflict of interest. So when you talk about doing bids, and actually people may not realize what is a bid actually. How do you?
Well, a bid is
go
like
about
an estimate for a particular project. For like the cooler freezer that Sean was talking about, we've got 3 different companies, refrigeration companies, to come in and give us estimates for the same exact model and product that we want to put out there in the food building. And it's just making sure that there's checks and balances to know that we have 3 competitive prices, and we can decide, to go with a cheaper one or what makes sense for us what contractor to use.
Cool. Yeah, and so what this is saying is, when you have those bids, it's okay to send it out to the congregation and friends and families, so long as those it's in the best interest of the church and there's not a conflict of interest
Exactly.
there. And that's what it's all about. We want to keep what's the best interest of God's property in view here. So in closing, is there anything that you guys would like to share about just anything with the property team, anything that you'd like to bring up?
I would just like to welcome anyone who wants to not necessarily be on the team, but be a volunteer for the property team, to be able to just enhance the beauty of this wonderful place. It's such a reverent place to come to, a great worship experience, great sanctuary and facility. And it just would be nice if anyone wants to come and help with flower beds or mowing or just doing anything that we do here on the property team. You're more than welcome. We would love to have you.
And I would just kind of reiterate this, pretty much the same thing. We're a team that's not necessarily seen. We are behind the scenes. We're only going to be heard from if things aren't right, like if the grass isn't cut or if the building's starting to deteriorate. But we are here to support, and we are always looking for volunteers, whether you want to join the property board once a month or just come out and volunteer for various things in some of the projects, or even helping us with working with contractors to get bids for certain things. If you have a certain talent that you want to join and help us out with, let us know. Reach out to us. We're always looking for help.
Yeah. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you,
Thank
Mark.
you.
Thank you.
Sean. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you for watching. If you do us a favor and you click the thumbs up button, that's the like button, and if you will subscribe to our channel, that really helps us out, and we could certainly use more subscribers. Also, do us a favor and share this. If you know anybody who's interested on helping out with the property team, if they have any time, Wednesday mornings for cutting grass, or just any time that they're available. Any way that they can help out, we're certainly always appreciating help in that way. So go ahead and share that and share this video with them. Maybe they can find out some things they didn't know about the day-to-day things that go on here at Trinity. Because this is a great place, but it wouldn't be made possible without people like you that work behind the scenes. So we thank you for your work. Also, just a reminder for you that next week is Memorial Day, so we will not have an episode next week, so Ken gets 2 weeks off. I just like to tease him there. But we will be back in 2 weeks with children's ministry kicking off in June. And also starting in June, we'll be going to every other week with Trinity Talk Live. We'd mentioned that in weeks past, but it will officially be starting in June. It will be going to every other week. So Ken will have every other week off. Just kidding. Well, thank you very much for watching, and God bless.
In your word we will